Dear students, good morning. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 16th November 2020. The first article for discussion is Protect Our Republic, My Lords. This is obviously about judiciary and justice. This article is written in the context of recent bail to Arnab Goswami by Supreme Court and very comments from Justice Chandrachud. Let us understand one point. Where judiciary gets its legitimacy from? Obviously from the constitution. I will say that constitution is a facilitator for judicial legitimacy. Whatever the articles you talk about, 32 to 26, these are facilitators. The real purpose of judiciary is to protect the rights of the citizens. Obviously, when judiciary protects the rights of the citizens, it will get public trust and also esteem in the eyes of the people. This is the basis for judicial legitimacy. So my take home point is this: judiciary gets its legitimacy from public trust and confidence. Constitution facilitates it through Article 32 and 226. Next important issue is justice. The justice shall give you sense of fairness. This sense of fairness comes from equal treatment. That's why it is famously said that without equality there is no justice. When Supreme Court do not give a sense of fairness or sense of justice through unequal treatment of the individuals, what is the consequence? The wrong consequence will be injustice, sense of injustice, which can lead to collapse of the order. The order of the day will collapse. So that's why Supreme Court has a very pristine and respected function to protect the order through building the sense of justice among the people. So in this case, Arnab Goswami was said to be given a preferential treatment. He went to High Court of Mumbai, Bombay High Court. From there he went to Supreme Court. This all happened within a day. In this case, two premier courts in India have sat on freedom of an individual. Yes, it is good. And to what extent freedom is respected through this importance, we all appreciate it. Then what about the others? What about the freedoms of the communities? Let us take Jammu and Kashmir, Article 370, internet issue over there, house arrest. Added to that, activists like Sudha Bharadwaj, who are old people suffering from various ailments. What about them? Is this not unequal treatment? Let us take one person. He is supposed to get a sipper because he is suffering from Parkinson's. And court has adjourned that. Sipper means a small straw-like thing. In this scenario, this unequal treatment, will it not give rise to sense of unfairness and injustice? This is what has been questioned. Next is, what is the institution which can fight or which can obstruct the majoritarianism in a democracy? Any bulwark against majoritarianism is judiciary. So judiciary is supposed to obstruct the tendencies of majoritarianism. Hope you understand that. Democracy has a general leaning towards majoritarianism. In the interest to protect the rights of all, including minorities, judiciary questions the intentions of the government of the day. In that case, judiciary is a protector of democracy. The power of judicial review is given to the courts to ensure that every law and rule will be in the spirit of the constitution, and this power has to be used by the courts regularly. In this case, judicial inaction is more dangerous. So judiciary keeping silent on the majoritarian actions of the executive is going to push the country into darkness. So judicial inaction has to convert into judicial action over here. And another point we need to remember is executive and judiciary, how their relations have to be. In this case, Justice Venkatachalaya made an important point. The relations need not be cordial. Even it shall not be expected in a system that has checks and balances. Remember this word, checks and balances. In this scenario, the relations have to be correct and constitutional, need not be cordial. This is the take home point. So 3 points I have highlighted is judiciary is an institution to protect the rights and to protect the democracy against majoritarian tendencies. Judiciary inaction is more dangerous. And next is constitutional rights. Judiciary, when they are protecting, it has to give a sense of fairness, justice to everyone. Inequality breeds injustice. These are the points you need to remember for your examination. Article is about border on the boil. This is about violation of the ceasefire agreement on Indo-Pakistan border and LOC. So, firing has happened across LOC and Pakistan wants to send the terror elements under the cover of the snow and under the cover of fire. India retaliated it. And Pakistan surprisingly made allegations against India saying that India funding the terrorists in Pakistan so that China-Pakistan economic corridor do not move forward. And there is a lot of action happening in Gilgit-Baltistan. You can see that this region is declared as a province recently, and added to that elections are also being conducted. And on the other hand, in Ladakh region we have a standoff with China. If you see Jawaharlal Nehru, he always feared about two-front war, two-front enemies for India. That's why he even sent Mr. Sheikh Abdullah to Pakistan to visit Pakistan to make peace on Kashmir issue. And while he was on tour to Pakistan, Nehru passed away. The real threat externally for India is a two-front war. On one side, Pakistan, the other side is China. Enemy of enemy is a friend kind of attitude is shown between China and Pakistan is called as all-weather friend by China. So this, and China and Pakistan also gives the similar status to China. That's how it is going on. In this scenario, India need to be more cautious, and Jammu and Kashmir, if it becomes hostile, people becomes hostile, obviously the situation is going to become complex at the LOC. Next is Suu Kyi again. Before understanding Suu Kyi, let us understand Myanmar a bit. In Myanmar, you have different tribal groups. More than 200 ethnicities are living in Myanmar. So it is a very complex society. So devolution of power and autonomy to these ethnic groups is a demand there. And how to control and bring order in such a society is a major question. So the first big question of Myanmar is federalism and how to redistribute the power across various ethnicities. Next is, in Rakhine state, you have refugees. Right, who are these? The Rakhine state is known for Rohingyas. These Rohingyas, fearing persecution, are fleeing Myanmar, and most affected country because of this refugees is Bangladesh. This is an issue which has to be solved. Suu Kyi did not support Rohingyas. In this context, it is stated that a democrat and a human rights activist or believer like Suu Kyi, she has to support Myanmar, especially refugees of Myanmar. That is the request of international community. The constitution of Myanmar is very complex. So military junta is holding power in Myanmar. Slowly they are giving way for democracy. But they are not holding or living the leashes together. So still they are holding the threads of power. How they are holding? One important ministries like defense, home affairs will be in the hands of military, and constitutional amendment cannot be made without the permission of military. Certain seats in the parliament are reserved entirely for military members. So in this case, the true power transfer do not come to democracy or to the winning candidate. Added to that, Suu Kyi herself cannot become the president as she lived and married a non-citizen of Myanmar. So these are the reasons we say Myanmar power structure is very complex. So Ms. Suu Kyi has to navigate through this in spite of getting a landslide victory in Myanmar. Next is a recipe to tear down trade unions. This is about Industrial Relations Code which is passed by the Parliament. It is meant to replace Trade Unions Act. Industrial Disputes Act, etc. So, what is the criticism over here? Let us take Trade Unions Act. It has come into existence during the colonial period. The most important thing it gave to the trade unions is giving immunity from criminal action. It means if they are taking up a strike or some other thing, so criminal conspiracy related charges cannot be levied on trade unions. So trade unions are important instruments for collective bargaining of the workers. Now author says that these trade unions are becoming meaningless in this code. Why? The power to deregister. So why they can be deregistered? The grounds of deregistration are very vague and general. On a flimsy ground of disruption of industrial production, they can be deregistered. Once they are deregistered, any strike they call for becomes illegal. All the employees can be dismissed. This is what is done in Telangana state RTC strike by none other than government itself. Second most important thing is the criminal protection from criminal conspiracy is going to go away with, and these trade union leaders can also be arrested by police. So the trade unions are going to see a death knell because of these particular codes. And what will happen because of this? Trade unions can also be seen as an informal force in industrial relations. If they are not there, a vacuum will be created. This vacuum will be filled by extra legal forces. A colonial authority like British, why they recognized the trade unions? Because they wanted to have industrial peace. Trade unions played an important role in India's industrial peace. Any attempt to de-recognize them will ultimately threaten the industrial peace itself. That is what author is trying to put it over here. For example, industrial relations code can threaten the very existence of trade union and the protections given to it. For example, charges of criminal conspiracy can be levied against them. That's how we can put the point in our answer. Next is sex ratio related thing. Arunachal records the best sex ratio. What is sex ratio? It is the number of female to the 1,000 male births in India. In this case, Arunachal Pradesh has highest 1084 female births to male. And coming to the worst performers, it is the Manipur. If you go to divide, how the gender divide, sex ratio divide exists in India, north, south, south fares better than north, and then west, east, east is better than west. So northwestern regions of India, they are female feticide and other atrocities against the girl children are very high. You can see the worst sex ratio among the bigger states, it is in Punjab. So Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, to an extent Rajasthan, these are the hubs of worst sex ratio in India. Now, the next article, mega trade bloc RCEP takes off. What is this RCEP stands for? Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Who led this RCEP? China led this. And who are the members? ASEAN, and then in Oceania, that is Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, all these are the members of this. It counts for 30% of global GDP. It means it is the largest trade bloc in the world today. Obviously, if India is part of this, it could have gained a lot of trade. India is also ambitious to become the part of global value chains. That is one point. And second is, the members of the Quad, two important members of the Quad, Australia and Japan, they are also part of this trade bloc. In this scenario, India has walked out of this agreement for the reason that its interests, especially farmers' interests, are not considered. And there is also another reason that the China-India trade-off. Now, RCEP agreement initially said window is always open for India. But today it has kept certain strictures. That is, India has to reapply tomorrow if it wants to enter into this trade bloc. And second important thing is, the conditions of the day will be considered. Any new developments of the day will be taken into consideration. That's how it is stated. It means it is not an open invitation today for India. In this, we can expect a question. Because Trans-Pacific Partnership, it is shelved or it is put in dustbin by Mr. Trump. Is India looking for Trans-Pacific Partnership once it gets revived? Mr. Joe Biden, once he takes the office, that we need to be clear. Because multilateral trade, it is gaining the significance now. After the World Trade Organization lost its steam, these multilateral trade blocs are becoming important for external trade engagement of a country. For Indian ambitions, India is expected to be part of this, but it has its own considerations and concerns. This is where UPSC can look into a question. They may not ask about RCEP. Is India doing a mistake by not joining the trade blocs or multilateral trade blocs? Like that, the question can be asked for. So you can ask, India is part of WTO, how it has gained being part of WTO, and these multilateral trade blocs, what is the advantage they does to India, and what are the India's concerns? These are all the things you need to address. That can be a possible question for this year mains. Thank you very much. Have a great day. All the best.